Hey, it's your pal Mike Squires, and this is the Couchers Podcast, episode number 219. And my guest, drummer, percussionist Fredo Ortiz, currently drumming in the legendary Los Lobos. Also was the former percussionist in the Beastie Boys. Has toured with a ton of bands, Gogol Bordello. He's got a killer resume. We talk his history, his failed attempts at guitar lessons as a kid, and I had a great time hanging with Fredo. What a cool dude. I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed having this conversation. If you are enjoying the Couches podcast, please by all means support us at Patreon, patreon.com/couchriffs. Patreon support is what keeps this going. It's what makes the Couch Riffs cover song videos possible. Fredo played in the On a Rope episode, the Rocket from the Crypt song. Killer. So good. He picked that one out too. So I appreciate your support. Seriously, if I didn't have Patreon, I don't think that the podcast could happen. Cover songs, probably not. So thank you. I would also like to thank River City Guitars in Spokane, Washington. River City Guitars is a small but mighty, by appointment only, boutique, vintage, and used guitar store in Spokane, Washington. If you're on tour, traveling through Spokane, you're on vacation, you're traveling across the country, or you want to make a special trip to make that killer purchase that you've been wanting to do, get a hold of them. Sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. Also, check out their Reverb store. They're back on Reverb, and slowly, they're always getting in new stuff, and they're slowly populating that stuff onto Reverb. So follow them on social media. And if you've got a vintage guitar or a collection or something that you are wanting to sell, get a hold of them. Thank you, River City Guitars. You guys are awesome. Thank you also to Variety Coffee Roasters in Brooklyn, New York. Variety Coffee Roasters has a number of cafes throughout Brooklyn and Manhattan. Be sure to follow them on social media and check out their subscription service on their website, varietycoffeeroasters.com. I drink Variety Coffee every single morning. I can't give it a higher recommendation. I can't get a better endorsement. So go check out that subscription service, tick a couple of boxes, and you'll get it every week, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever you want. You'll never run out of coffee, and you'll be happy. And what more could you want but happiness? Don't forget the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't be a dick. So, well, he came to us as Biggie, you know.
Nice.
But Mr. Big sounds distinguished.
Mr. Big, what up?
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Drummer Awareness Month. I try to say it like Drummer Awareness Month. I try to say it
Better be
special,
aware.
like NPR style.
Right.
Because, I think that most people on stage are frustrated drummers.
They all got an idea. It should go
Everyone's
like
got
this.
an idea.
It should go like this.
How's that? How is that for a drummer because everyone's got an idea of how it's supposed to go. Oh yeah, here's the song. What do you think about this? No one says that to anyone else, do they? I guess
Depends,
band.
but it makes me think of when I was like, 14, 15, 16, and you finally connect with somebody musically and stuff is being created without you kind of like thinking that hard about it. Whatever it is, at what level you're doing it at. Could sound like shit, could sound like it's tight, but it's like all those creative ideas, like they don't come that much anymore because you want to It depends on what situation, because I'm usually playing for somebody else where I need to play their stuff,
Right.
and learn their songs and learn it the way they need it, but then also give my flavor to it. But man, those innocent, beats and ideas that, would come out just jamming in a room. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm not jamming in a room with people anymore. I'm just constantly on the road
There
or
hasn't
in
been a lot of
studio.
jamming in rooms in the last couple years, but I think we're getting back to it, right? We're
Yeah,
getting
no,
back
for
to it.
sure.
Where did you grow up?
I lived in Southern California, city of Gardena.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, bordering Torrance, Compton, Carson, the harbor area, San Pedro, Redondo Beach, Hermosa Beach, all in that kind of umbrella of LA.
And what drums were your first instrument?
Drums, I guess I want to say the first lesson was on a guitar. And before even considering a lesson, my dad had an acoustic guitar at home and a piano, and he taught me some boogie, like double handed thing, and I still play it to this day, but I never branched out of that. And it's like, oh, I know something.
Party
And
favor.
and that's it. Yeah. But then he had an acoustic guitar, so then I would, you know, jam, not knowing what I was doing. But yeah, I think it was out probably when I was like 7 or 8. I was getting guitar lessons nearby, and the teacher would leave, and then I would jump on the Remo drum pad in the corner because it looked cooler. I wanted to hold things, and he'd come back. It's like, "What are you doing? Come on, man! Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Let's go." And I'm just like, this sucks. I went home. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to play guitar. She's like, Nope. I paid for the lesson. You're gonna play guitar. I was like, Nope. I'm gonna play those Remo drum pads that are in the little corner. You should check them
Even the
out.
pads were more appealing to
Even the
you than the
pads were more,
guitar.
yeah. And now I wish I would have stuck with the guitar because then I'd know more theory and chords and stuff like that. I play by ear and by what somebody teaches me, and then that's it. That's the level of trying to push through the whole spectrum. It's like, I'll do what I can. Here's a bar chord.
Sometimes that's all it takes, man.
That's all it takes. Just one bar chord. I mean, you can listen to Helmet. Dun, 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 dun.
Dude,
It's
I wanted to be in Helmet so bad.
right.
I
It
kind
was
of
like,
still
and that
do.
those became the influences later. But yeah, drums, man. It was like, I guess I was at the drum pad and concert band, and it wasn't until high school that I was like, oh, I could be in a band.
So your mom never relented and got you a drum pad and drumsticks?
They did. She did.
Oh, they did.
Eventually, she's like, okay, we're gonna try it. The school that I was going to, a public school, was actually giving a music class, and I remember having to buy the Remo pad, and drumsticks, the 7As and that gray drum pad. First, second, third, and then fourth grade, we started to integrate with the concert band, and then once we got to like middle school, which was 6, 7, and 8, was it 5, 6, 7, 8? Then it was real like timpani and bass drum and the drum set in the corner, and I immediately
Orchestral
gravitated to
percussion.
that. So I was like, yeah. My mom signed me up for the music program, and I found my place. Like, I didn't. It didn't seem foreign to me to just like, oh yeah, what does this sound like? What does this do?
Oh, that's amazing. Did you get into drum corps or any of that stuff, or were
In high
you
school,
strictly
yeah, and it was
orchestral?
not. I was lucky that they brought in a couple teachers, that kind of like shape us up. So it kind of taught me a lot about gripping and rudiments, and I was reading drum marching music, and all the roughs and gawks and all this crazy names for for the playing, but it's like I learned it in match grip, traditional grip, and having to be close to the head and real technical things like that. And that happened like every 2 years, but out of the 4 years that I was there, marching band was our thing, and we'd compete in local marches and parades and stuff, and actually place, and like Don Bosco Tech
Really?
with a 3.9.
Oh, that's
all
amazing.
school.
Is
Yeah,
there
it's like
video footage of any of those performances
there
floating
might
around? Have
be. I
you
mean, me in it. I don't know. Maybe my dad has some somewhere packed away, but nah, man. I
Yeah.
wish there were
Oh,
a couple parents that had videotape. I wonder, like, they should pull those
that's
out.
awesome. So through this period of time, so you're like a band geek. Are you also like listening to rock music and playing in bands? You have a trap kit at home?
I had I eventually before I got to high school, I eventually got a trap kit at home. I got a Pearl. My parents were like, "Oh, he wants to play." My uncle got me a Toys R Us drum set, and it lasted me for a week. And I broke through the paper heads, and they're like, "All right, let's try it out." And then I just wouldn't stop, right? But what was your question?
Oh, just when did you have a dual life of sort of orchestral,
Oh, right.
classically trained drumming and rock band drumming
Oh,
happening at parallel?
I was going back to what was I listening to, and like early on in the name, my dad was playing everything on the record player, even from Los Lobos to the Beatles to Pete Townsend to we had this new age channel 94.7 The Wave, and I was hearing artists like Andreas Vollenweider and Jean-Luc Ponty, and all these like which had like dope drummers, now that I listen to them, like, those musicians on all that stuff, it's like incredible. So like the mixture of music was rolling around in my head. When I got to high school, there was punk rock. When I was in middle school, there was a lot of hip hop. There was a lot of I remember somebody giving me a suicidal tape one time, and then eventually, all the '90s and 2000s came along with that, and
Right.
it was just a mix, man. So I kind of had everything around me, and joining a band out of high school, it was a punk band, so I immediately just started playing punk rock in a band and learning how
Your
to
first
play
band was a
hard and
punk band.
consistent. Yeah,
What was your first band that you were working in?
it was called the Villains. Eventually, we called it Los Villains.
Did you guys tour a bunch?
We didn't tour much. We did a lot of local shows. We opened up for Social D a couple times. Played gigs with Voodoo Glow Skulls and a lot, and a lot of local stuff. I mean, it was out of high school, so we were doing backyard parties in your local pub.
Right.
Too young to be in the bar, so once you play, you got kicked out. And we went and drank in the
Right.
parking lot instead.
Try to stay out of trouble.
like it was. I'm glad and happy that I got to experience that. I mean, I guess most do, or people learn how to play later in life and kind of miss out on being a part of your local scene, and being a band and your
Right.
friends are going to go see and go to some random house and somebody's on the roof, jumps off into the pool and people are pitting. And yeah, man.
It's weird when you get yourself into a touring situation and you're sort of embedded into a scene and all of a sudden you're kind of like gone for 2 years and you come
Yeah,
back and everything's different, right? You don't like there's a bunch of new faces, new bands.
yeah. From
Um
playing locally, and also I was a part of about three bands in LA: Ozo Motley, Yeska, and the Villains. We rotated around, LA and San Diego and San Francisco, maybe Arizona, but that's about it. But the year that I actually got, I met somebody at the right place at the right time, which ended up being Money Mark from the Beastie Boys, was when I detached and went away for, well, that was only a month, but the years to follow, I went away for the year and came back and like, whoa, what's going on? And every time I kept coming back, like the scene started withering away. So there wasn't really anything to do in LA anymore. And my whole
right.
life was consumed with just touring and seeing the world and seeing how the rest of the world lived, you know.
You were in Ozo Motley.
Yeah, they started a band. Well, first I was in a band called Yeska that came out of the same high school that the Villains did, and we were playing around. And a lot of our guys. Well, I wasn't in the band originally, but they were both talent show bands, Villains and Yeska. And then my friends were in both bands, so I would just go hang out and listen to Yeska rehearse. And there was one day where they're like, "Hey, you got percussion at home? You should bring it." And I hadn't started playing my percussion. I was full kit, but my dad bought me the congas and the cowbells, and so I brought them to rehearsal. And so I started to play Latin music and Yesca, and we mixed Latin jazz with ska, Afro-Cuban rhythms. So I was they were going to jazz class at the local community college, and I was learning this stuff through them, and subtlety and comping a soloist and stuff like that, which led to them going to college with some of the guys that started Ozo Motley. And it was kind of just a jam, and we called it Todos Somos Marcos first. And we were just play local spots and, rallies and fundraisers and lot of like city focused, community focused, events, but then it turned into, hey, why don't we call it this? And our old drummer came up with Ozo Motley, and they're like, yeah, that sounds good. And so I just kind of I bounced around from band to band, but these three bands were all homies, and we were just always consistently playing, so that I would be institutionalized and become
Oh, that's
a significant
rad.
part of these bands.
Let me ask you a little side question.
Yeah,
It sounds like your pops was pretty supportive, but he also bought you congas and some other things.
yeah.
And was that sort of like wishful thinking, like, hey, there's this world here that exists. Maybe you could look into it. While
I
meanwhile, you're over here playing in punk rock bands.
right.
Was he stoked when you started using those things?
He definitely was, and it just became, his favorite thing. I mean, he told me once that I was living his dream. And I have musicians in my family. On my dad's side, his two brothers were musicians, and one toured. And my grandfather, he was an orchestra leader. And so,
Oh,
but my
wow.
dad didn't get to grow up with his father, so he didn't get that, immediate schooling. But he had it in him where he wanted to play guitar. So he played in a trio in LA. It was like a three piece, like they just sing like boleros and the Spanish guitar, but some Mexican like bolero songs. And so as a teenager, he was wanting to do that, and then he had to go to the army, and then came back, and then had to go to school, and then had a kid. Like, it's like there
Right.
was no time for music for him as much as he loved music. I mean, the dude at one point, my dad opened up a stereo shop to repair stereos, and I learned how to build boom boxes for the back of cars, and I was putting together crossovers and learning about speakers and 12-inch speakers, 10 up to 18-inch speakers, crossovers and tweeters. And I would build all these things so that my dad kind of had this knowledge, that I got to soak up, and understand how to solder something. Just a lot of people don't get
Right.
to know that stuff. My dad was pretty handy and hands on, but at the same time, music was a part of our lives. And so, yeah, I think he was like, here, okay, here, try this instrument, and I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, it's cool. Here, try this instrument, 'cause, and there was, even though they were focused to certain styles of music, like, I don't know, he just knew, and to the point where he bought me a kick drum mic, and I'm like, what is this? I don't need this microphone, but what's in my kick drum right now? That AKG 112. It's like,
It's that
he just
microphone.
knew. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
microphone. Yeah, he just
Wow.
knew. So yeah, he pretty much, and my mother, also like she was an educator and teacher. And when I was going to start touring, she's like, I think better you're better off going to school and finishing school. I'm like, but I don't know, I'm kind of getting hired, like they're paying me, and I'm going to Australia, and I'm doing all this stuff, like, and she's like, all
Right.
right, let's give it a try. If it doesn't work out, then you finish school, and I went on the road. At that level, when I started kind of being hired and sought out as a hired musician, the ladder just kept going up, and I didn't know that path was, and this was all my parents, pushing me, but at the same time, it's like I immersed my brain into that, into music.
Uh, that so when did the wheels really start turning for you? How old were you? Like 20, 22?
Like wheels, as far as like I want to keep doing this, or I need to figure
Well,
this out because now I'm actually being hired and I need to figure out how I'm going to
yeah, you're like
navigate
on a
this.
real tour and you're
Yeah,
getting weeklies.
right. I mean, I was 20 and it was a fun time, and I was living at home still, I really
Uh,
didn't have any responsibilities, so I really didn't. The wheels didn't turn. I was just like, okay, oh, money, okay, groove, jam, um, network, go back home,
right.
go to the local bar. What do you want to drink? What do you want? You know, it was just an innocent time. I'm just like, I'm going to enjoy the time. You know, when I should have been investing, but you know, nobody was showing me that at that age. You know, it's like,
Yeah, well, we
and
all could have used that someone to push
but
us in that direction.
I kept going back and forth to. It's like I'd come back to my regular life, you know, and but a regular life that was still like thriving and playing. Like we were always playing the House of Blues or, you know, second to headlining spot at the Whiskey or whatever, you know, or residency at the Viper Room, which were local spots, but they were spots that everybody wanted to play, and we were there weekly. You know, it was like we're
Who was
doing our
doing
thing,
that gig?
huh?
Who was doing that gig?
Yeska, we had a residency at Viper Room, like late '90s, and then Ozo Motley as well. And Ozo Motley, we had residencies at what was it called?
Is the Viper Room still happening?
I just read a story that they're gonna build a an apartment complex there,
Uh,
but I think they're gonna
do you
leave
remember
some
that
businesses in
crazy
front.
the sound guy there, the Scottish guy
Yeah.
who was
Oh
he was
man,
great.
I loved him. He was
Fuck,
my.
that guy was great.
It's at the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
He's like, it sounds great. He always loved mixing me. I don't know. I just kind of had whatever I was learning. Everything was just heavy and just like solid. You know, and it's like, oh man. He's like, I didn't have to mix you at all. It's like, sounds great. Oh, what was it? Frankie. Frankie.
Yeah. What a guy.
Yeah, I love that guy. I
Uh
wonder where he's at, man. Miss that guy. It's been years.
I hope he's still around. He was good.
Yeah.
He was great. It always sounded good in there. Tight little space for
Tight
people
little
who've never
space,
been to
man.
the
You had to
Viper
use their
Room. It's a
kit.
tiny room.
Even to like see a band there. I think I saw 22 Jacks with Joey Ramone and who was on drums. So Dave Medella's and there's another um anyways, yeah.
E-
To
Even though
watch
it
a
was
band in there, it
small,
was just like you're like this in these little corners, and then
uh,
you're just like, and then you turn around, there's the bar. Turn around, there's the stage.
even though it was so small, it felt like it was operating at an elevated level. I think just because it had that curtain that would open for the for the
Right.
performance, like the curtain would close, and that kind of lent a little bit of like old school Hollywood showbiz pizzazz. And I always
Yeah.
dug that. I
Yeah.
dig a curtain.
I dig a
Also
curtain.
kept I dig a
Small
curtain, man.
curtain.
Although and it would keep the cigarette smoke back until it opened up.
Oh man.
The early back in the good old days.
Yeah. I remember the layers of smoke.
Oof. Um. So when did you move on from Ozomatli and Yeska and start
I
venturing out?
I mean that so I mean we graduated in 93, so 93, 94, 95 we were playing in LA and all those bands were going. And then at the end of 95 I met Money Mark and then was recruited to play with the Beastie Boys. So then that was January of 96. And then I did that for a month and it was at the end of Ill Communication tour and then I came back home and then went back to the three bands that were still consistently playing and rehearsing and creating, and we were making albums. Ozo Motley got signed in '97. Um, you know, Villains were on the brink of getting signed, and Epitaph, and we were talking, and like, you know, it's like I was part of projects that were actually doing stuff, and even Yeska got signed to a label out of San Francisco, Aslan Records. You know, we got to put out records. I was now in that mix of putting out music, but then now having to understand the business, you know. And then
Right.
like with Ozo Motley, like I had to make a decision whether I was going to be a core member or a side member. And I think because I had experienced the Beastie Boys, I was like, well, I kind of need to leave my options open. I think would be the wishful thought of like it panning out to be okay, because then I could become a core member with Ozo, and and we don't know where that was going to go, and but it kept climbing and climbing. I think they got onto Warp Tour the year that I quit, with Deftones, and I think it was 97, and but I went my direction, and so 97, Money Mark decides to make me his drummer because he's doing a solo project. He's putting out solo records aside from the Beastie Boys. So now I'm working with him, and he's taking me under his wing, and I'm learning studio stuff. I'm learning how to set up. I'm tearing down his gear while he schmoozes. But I'd come up as a guest on one song, with Money Mark. Like, hey, he's gonna play the song "Insects Are All Around Us." And I played. It turned out to be like, hey, I'm gonna do a full tour. I'm gonna hire some band members. We're gonna learn songs. So '97 was taken up by Money Mark and also the Offspring in '97 because their tour manager, who was tour managing Rancid on the one tour my first like world tour that I went on, he was managing the Offspring. They're like, "Hey, we need a percussionist if you're available." I'm like, "Sure." And it was from one song, and so that's when it started, like kind of just blossoming and changing my whole program of like, well, where do I put all my chips here? I got all my friends back home, and we're all doing stuff, but then I have all these other opportunities that keep popping up. So I just had to go with the flow and let it figure itself out, I guess.
In 96, when you went out for that month with the Beastie Boys, were you playing the drum kit or were you playing percussion?
So I was playing hand percussion, yeah.
And so that was also for like a not the whole set, right? You'd come out for how many songs?
Probably like 6 or 7 songs out of a 20 song
Um,
set list.
Let me ask you this, because going out on tour, like, did you went out on tour with the Offspring?
Yeah, we did an East Coast run, which was with L7 and Mighty Bosstones,
Oh,
and it
that's
started
rad.
in Boston. And I got hired for the one song and did that for 2 to 3 weeks.
I mean, so much of the monotony of tour is sort of relieved. The tension and release of touring is wrapped up in your time on stage. Did you find that to be difficult? Like you were sort of bridled, like, all right, I'm out here, I'm doing this thing 24/7, but I'm playing one song.
I think I immediately felt the comfort of like, oh, I don't have to do anything until this time. Cool. There was a nice chest of Bud Light, which the band would drink, and a nice chest of Heineken, which nobody else would drink. So I took the Heineken, and what helped in that time was Josh Freeze came on tour with us because he was going to
Oof.
take I forgot the other drummer's name, but he had to leave at one point. But Josh was just hanging out, so like that dude was just I think he was hanging out, kind of absorbing, learning the songs, and also just being on tour. And so me and him start just kind of absorbing that time of just like being backstage and BSing backstage, and then he would also come out and join me on this one song because he wanted to. I mean, to the point where we bought flash paper in Philadelphia at this magic store, and at the what was the name of the electric? It was a big venue, electric something. But we, at this one point in the song, the one song that I'm playing at some point, it's like we lit a whole sheet when you're just only supposed to light up like a dime size piece of
Yeah.
flash paper that magicians use to it's a quick flash, and we just lit the whole thing, and it caused a big thing, and production's like, what are you guys doing? We don't have a pyro license, and this and that, and like we're like, sorry.
You're like, you don't sound very punk rock right now, guys.
So um that's how I you know made use of my time playing one song.
That's how you did
I
one
didn't think
tour
about
with
it.
him also.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
uh I mean, at this point, you're rolling. Like it feels like it's like
And it's
you're doing
happening. I
it.
mean, that was like between What's Happening at Home, Beastie Boys, then Money Mark, then Offspring, and then just kind of going down the line, I ended up doing a play where I played Japanese taiko drums with my friend Maseo Hernandez. We have a group together called East LA Taiko. We play Japanese taiko drums, but we mix Latin percussion. So Latin percussion just became kind of like my forefront, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're the guy," and I'm like, "No, I want to play kit," and they're like, "No, you play timbales." I just had this understanding, and it was just coming out. It was flowing, So, and now I'm playing Japanese drums, and we did a play for about 2 months, and every night there was a matinee, and there was like, I was getting all these crazy experiences like back to back to back, and then
How much different was it to do a production like that versus, like a scripted, like a set list show production,
yeah, it was a
like a
trip because
touring?
you're not feeding off of, well, you kind of are feeding off of audience, and you are feeding off of the actors, so it's a whole other way of looking at it, performing, but it was more
Right.
controlled, and the rehearsals in a room with the script and following the script and having it. I mean, they're definitely not equal, but I mean, there is a script, for certain bands. This is what we're going to do. These are the steps we're going to take. And in this song, we're going to jump on this part. Some bands throw
Right.
theatrics in their shows. So I was kind of Money Mark loved to throw theatrics into it and just act like something's going wrong, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" But then, at the end of the day, I'd be like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "What?" I was like, "Everything cool?" He's like, "Yeah, everything's cool. What are you talking about?" I was like, "When this and this happens." He's like, "Ah, man, don't worry about it. It's just making a stink, to make people make people cringe.
Right.
It's like, ah." But this specific one, was a play called Blade to the Heat by Oliver Mayer, and it was following the script and going to rehearsals and doing it almost, every weekend, almost every other day, and having to be there. But yeah, after a while, you're sitting in your same chair and you're still following a script, and you wait for that moment, boom, and you're looking down. We were up on a second story scaffolding in this theater,
Oh,
and they
wow.
actually had this. It was about boxing and boxers and kind of discovering the masculinity, femininity, whatever. And a big ring would come down, and these boxers would get in, and there was referees, and then go back up, and there'd be drama. But yeah, man, I don't know. I was taking it at face value, and I had never done anything like it before, so I was absorbing it all and learning, going like, okay, this is how this works. Yeah.
Have you done any more theater stuff? I've talked to a number of drummers
Uh-huh.
who work on Broadway, and that's crazy because they don't even see the stage,
Right.
right? They're on
Right.
in-ears.
Okay.
They're in sweatpants, like they're in sweatpants playing, I don't know, whatever. That's nuts. They're just
Yeah, I saw
they're
a rock and
watching on
roll
the.
one. It was like is it Hedwig? It was like
Oh,
what
yeah.
was it? But it was on Broadway, and my friend Peter Yanowitz was playing on drums. But that was like the band was a part of the play, right? It was a part of the performance,
Right.
and they were right there, and they even acted, like I was tripping on that, and having him kind of like gonna be like, hey, be a part of the scene, and then play,
Do you
right? And
think you
then
could do that? Are you into like
I
taking
would I
on
would be
something like that
down.
in the future?
I think in the end I was always down to do whatever was asked of me. Hey, you want to try this? Sure, I'll try it. Like, why not? For him, like, he
Right.
actually like put my name down as a understudy in case he couldn't do some shows, and I'm like, oh wow, how am I going to pull this off? And I mean, but in the
Those
end, I
gigs are
think,
crazy too.
yeah, I come in. I don't come in always nervous into new situations, but you just never know how it's going to turn out, and you never know how much you're going to absorb, or as much as you absorb to actually make the job work, right? So it's like, and try it out. But in the end, it's like you kind of end up working it out while you're there, and instead of having to like go home and rehearse it and practice it. And I mean, I don't know, learning lines might be a different type of method. Music is more a feeling, right? It's like,
Right.
you know,
You be cool, man. Come on.
Yeah, Biggie.
He's always yelling at people. Um. So when you get done with a theater gig, what happens then?
Then so that's 97. I think there's probably months at home where I'm just gigging around locally, and at the end of '97, I'm still in contact with Money Mark, and he's saying that the Beasties are going to be recording a record. We might need you to get involved, maybe not. Don't get too excited, but I'll call you back. And then I
Don't
think they
call me, I'll
finally
call you.
recorded. Yeah, and I think Eric Bobo, who is now with Cypress Hill, he had left when I came in, and he came back and did the record, which ended up being Hello Nasty with Intergalactic and
Yeah.
a lot of. I mean, it was another great album by them, and they're like, "Hey, so we're going back out. Tour starts in '98. You want to go?" And I was like, "Sure." So all of a sudden, that was it was a no brainer, but I had to like now make a decision. Like, okay, where are my priorities going to be? It's like I didn't. In the end, I really didn't have to do anything but go. And whatever was happening at home would take care of itself, which eventually it did because now the world of session drummers and drummers that can take your place are now, you know, being put in place, and I'm off on the road, and I detach, and now that's my life, right? But '98, I mean, that was the biggest, probably one of the only biggest tours that I went on. I mean, our tours were always big, but that was like arena, the Forum for 2 nights, Madison Square Garden, like all these arenas around the U.S.
Was that in the
You
round
know,
too?
that was the end around show. So it's like at that
Dude.
caliber of show, it's like damn, like okay,
We've talked about it
and
on this
and,
show,
and
but
thought I had
people
to like learn how to be a rock star or something, but I just all I need to do is be myself, as
right.
as were they,
Uh those guys have a well documented sort of transformational journey, through their career and through their life. How much
Yeah.
of that, how much of their kind of thing rubbed off on you just being in the touring entourage there?
I mean, it was being rubbed off on me before that, just listening to their music and watching them. I was a
Sure.
fan. I saw them in
Yeah, but
94,
I listened to
95
the
at
music. I never
Lollapalooza.
was on tour with them. you
Right,
know,
exactly. But that influence already was rubbing off. But then I know what you're saying. It's like, okay, now being around, these guys, and it was another great learning experience because they were great people and they had good heads on their shoulders, and they knew how to run a business, and they knew how to make amazing music that influenced me as a teenager. And
yeah,
I mean, from the first record, it's like my dad took me to go see them. See, here's another thing my dad did was he did take me to concerts that I wanted to go to, and I was like, I want to see Run DMC. He's
wow,
like, cool. And then Beastie Boys were opening up, and Houdini, and like I was just he was exposing me, so it's like, oh man. And then to be there and be with these guys, and be there's you know we're probably 20 years apart, in age. But it's like, man, like I was lucky, and I'm grateful that those guys were just they as much as they joke around and say that every like they'd get interviewed and they'd start talking about a basketball team. Fredo, our point guard, was out there, shooting shots, but sometimes we missed those shots, like, but we were
sure,
a team. Like they included us all, and it's like it's pretty amazing, and then now to be called one of them, or be a part of that legacy. It's like Jesus, okay, you know. I've been in
I was at
situations where
the
it's tough to be with the artist, and it was just like it's like, oh, okay, I don't really want to be here, I've had those. They have crossed,
sure,
and I just have to not be there again. Be like, all right, see you later. Not for me.
yeah. I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction when the Beastie Boys were inducted, and I didn't
Oh, cool.
know how that was going to go down. I knew that they were being inducted, and I was stoked. I didn't know that they were not going to perform until we were there, and I was helping set up for the
Right.
sound check. I teched for Guns N' Roses that night. But
Okay.
was there ever talk? Were you ever contacted about that performance? Like, heads up, maybe this will
No,
happen? No.
no, no, and it's and I understand that, and I never feel like I'm expected to be there. It's like even though I'm a part of it, it's like it's in the end it's them three. And
In the end,
and
there was no performance by the band, also, of course.
right,
But
right.
uh, yeah, when you said, well, the music was already rubbing off. Uh, the funny thing, and this doesn't happen to me, but I was driving down the road, and the Beastie Boys came on the radio, and it was just like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and I started crying.
Oh man,
Like, I wept because I don't know why. I was just like, I can't believe that, you know. I was happy. It's like, here it is, but I just like, I can't believe there won't be more.
yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
a
I,
peculiar band to get emotional to.
right. But it's yeah, because I mean, I think it's just that thing where I mean, even me as who's someone who was inspired by them, it's like you knew they weren't done, and then you knew that there was so much more to come out of them, and it wouldn't stop, even if it was just an all hip hop album, to the Five Boroughs or whatever came after that, Hot Sauce Committee. It's like you knew that, yeah, and then the fact that you know Adam had to deal with that, and not be able to you know, come out in good health. It's like, man, like I got to see him direct the video. It was "Fight for Your Right to Party" revisited, which had
Right.
I forget all the actors in it who were in it, but it was just like a star-studded
You'd be
video,
hard
right?
pressed to name them all.
Yeah, I was. Oh, what was her? I can't remember her name at the moment. Oh, what was her name? Anyways, I was on the set and I just asked. I'm like, hey, can I be on the set? Because I just want to hang out. I want to see you guys. They're like, yeah, come on up. And Yauk was like, man, you should be something. You know what? Let's get him. We'll make him trash guy number one. And I was like, oh, cool. And at this point, Adam had gone through the surgery and like was just dealing with that, and you could see him like losing weight, but his mind was there. Everything was still like was still Adam, and so he puts me in this trash guy number one. I see the scene happening, and this is at 3 days later. I always wondered. I'm like, was he messing with me? Because he was known to be a jokester, and it's like, but the day ended. That first day ended, and he looks at me. He's like, "Why do you got this suit on?" And I'm like, "Cause you made me trash guy number one or whatever." And he's like, "We already did that scene." I was like, "Well, you were supposed to put me in there." He's like, "Oh man, oh, all right. Well, can you come tomorrow?" I'm like, "Sure." He's like, "But you got to be here at 5 a.m." I'm like, "All right, I'll be here at 5 a.m." So day ends, I leave, we come back 5 a.m. and I'm thinking I'm still going to be trash guy. So I go in and I suit up in my trash guy suit, and I'm just walking around. And he was like, "You're still wearing this suit?" And I'm like, "Well, aren't
You
you
got
going
a
to
new
throw me in
role.
somewhere?" And he's like, "No, we already did that scene. Actually, you know what? We're doing the cafe scene with Ted Danson. Like, what's her name? Laura Dern. They sat me. I was her partner on the seat. If you see the cafe scene, like I'm in the background, like my hair, and they gave me like the wardrobe girls like little V-neck sweater that didn't fit. It's like I was like, whatever, screw it. And he finally put me in a scene, and they actually had me do like lines, but they never made it to the video.
Right.
But
That's
it's like,
great.
there's like 50 actors, the well-known, famous actors just looking at me trying to act, and they don't know who the heck I am. But I got to see him at work, so it's, that guy just kept wanting to create until, he couldn't anymore, and it was pretty amazing. But I understand, I have a lot of friends, even fans that become friends, they're just like, it's tough. It's a tough thing to swallow, and me being this close, it was definitely a tough thing to swallow.
I can imagine. Uh, we have some mutual friends also.
Yes.
Timo
Yeah.
and New
Timo
York
Ellis.
people. How did you? How did New York stuff start to happen?
I mean, that was because he was in Sean Lennon's band at the
Right.
time, and they were on Grand Royal, and
Right.
we would go on tour, and and those tours. I mean, when we went to Japan, like Sean opened up, and he had an amazing band. I love that record. I got into little mini disc players, recording mini disc players, and I would plug in my headphones into the mic jack, and then like what do you call that? You're bootlegging a performance.
Right.
But I recorded with it, and there was one time I was singing along because I like a song, but I'm like so off key, so I ruined my own like bootleg trying to sing along. But Timo, man, yeah,
um, have you listened to Netherlands?
I have, I love it.
What a
Everything that,
fucking
yeah,
bananas band,
yeah. Dude.
dude.
I'm
Have you
following
seen them?
them. I haven't seen them, but I'm following Timo, so it's like he's always
What a
make
nutter.
keeping it interesting, man.
Yeah. I mean, live they operate. I mean, he's had a million lineups.
Yeah,
I think he runs a pretty tight ship, but it's always ship shape over there.
yeah,
That's nuts. I didn't know that those. So those were Beastie Boys shows that they opened. That's
yeah.
how you guys met.
Not. I'm pretty sure they did their own tours, but it was like, yeah, there was definitely a couple times that they opened up for us, specifically in
Oh,
Japan.
was it Chibo Mato?
Uh, the Chibo, was he playing with Chibo Mato?
He did, yeah,
And then wasn't he playing drums for Sean too?
yeah.
And but I think, yeah, we were all together, definitely. Miho
Nice.
and
Uh, so when Beastie Boys would come home, what were you doing to stay busy?
I never knew what to do, but something was always happening. Like I never knew what it was to like schedule myself. So I would just come home and then, oh, you're back. All right, cool. This is happening. This is happening. I was just kind of back into the flow. Everything that I was involved with, there was always something happening. So I lucked out,
And
and being a part of, groups that were actually working or had things to do.
when you would come home, were you getting more percussion gigs or were you playing drum kit?
It was pretty even, because through Money Mark, I met a lot of people that I did sessions for, and he was one of my first few sessions too when I started the recording, So, I mean, to the point where, I mean, later on, but, I recorded with Tenacious D's first record. I did percussion on that, and everybody had done, Dave and the whole band had done their parts right now. So I don't know.
It's go time.
Go.
um, so you were getting more and more oh, I was asking you, you said you have like 15 tambourines.
Yeah,
Do you have any like custom tambourines?
I do. There's a guy by the name of Paul E. Drums, and he was making some out of I don't know, like maple and rosewood and oak. They go on your hi hat,
Wow. Right.
and it's all wood. It's not metal. And yeah, that one and a handheld one. But for the most part, it's like whatever I find on the road at a thrift
Right.
shop. Could be a toy, could be
Right.
whatever. but I use them all at least once. That's the thing. It's like, why do you have so many things? I'm like, I don't know. Like, eventually, I use that one thing. It has a purpose.
So let me ask you this: when your dad first started buying you percussion, were you like, "Oh, come on, Dad," or
I was because it wasn't rock and roll.
and it's crazy how it's become such an important part of what you do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I mean, even the gig that I have right now with Los Lobos, it's like I'm playing drum set and I'm playing hand percussion at the same time.
Right.
I'm an octopus. But through Ozomali, through Yeska, through the villains, like I was learning how to do that. It was just I mean, when I joined Yeska, I think it went from timbales to some congas to some bongos to adding my rack tom to adding these other cowbells and now two crashes. Oh, then a kick drum, and then, like
Right.
but standing up and doing it and being the percussion guy. Like, I don't know.
Your pops is still here with us?
No, he passed on in 2010.
Oh, I'm sorry. Uh, he would have been so stoked to know you were playing with Los Lobos. You said he was
I think
spinning Los Lobos.
I want to say that he has something to do with it.
I'm sure he
you know,
does, man.
because I mean, that was his one of his favorite bands. And I
Wow.
grew up listening. It was on the turntable on the regular, and it wasn't even like their rock records. It was their first like it was all in Spanish, the traditional acoustic album. And they did different styles of songs, but mainly like Son Jarocho from Veracruz and Mexico. Like they were learning their roots and kind of this is what we want to do. I mean, they were in the garages playing in rock bands and playing, you know, 70s rock and roll, but they wanted to do that too. So I was hearing that first, and then I heard the rest of the records. I'm like, oh, this stuff is good. And then all of a sudden, like the band, the Villains, the singer, my best friend Luis Perez, his dad is Luis Perez of Los Lobos. So there's my other connection. So it's like I have like there are a lot of weird connections in all the bands that I've played in. They're not weird; they're meant to be. But it's funny how they come together because even like Beastie Boys and Meeting Money Mark, like we're both from the same city of Gardena. The reason Mike D says I'm the illest motherfucker from here to Gardena, I'm like, how do you know Gardena? You're a New Yorker. What's going on here? Unless you're from here, but I think you're straight up New York. It's like, but
Right.
that was Money Mark's influence, and be like, okay, but that whole connection and yeah, it's a trip. And I mean, to the Los Lobos, it's like so. I mean that in doing that with Ozomatli, it was percussion, it was timbales. Eventually in Yeska, I became the drummer, but then I added the percussion to my drum set, so I was still doing the part of two people, learning how to
Right.
do that. Yeah.
So how did the call for Los Lobos come to you?
I ran into them in Seattle in January 2020, and I was there for another gig with my friends Rough Church, and saw them in the street, heard about the show, went to the show, hung out, and eventually they're
You just
like,
ran
"Hey,
into him
let's."
on the street.
Yeah, I was just walking down the street. We are looking for a hat shop. Me and my friend Caitlin, our violin player, and then I run into Cesar Rosas from Los Lobos and his daughters, and I know his daughters.
Wait a minute, is that Caitlin that plays with
Rough Church,
with
Man's Body.
Shooter?
No, Caitlin Wolfberg, and she and we're just walking. We run into Caesar, and they're like, "Oh, we're playing tonight." Like, "Oh," so we ended up going to the show the next two nights, and the second night that we went to the Los Lobos show, like our friend Greg couldn't make it because he came down with a cold. So we're like, all right, I don't want to be in the room. We're going to the show. And that second night, they invited Caitlin to sit in on violin. I sat in on percussion, on a couple of songs, and and that kind of extended to, hey, what are you doing the next couple days? I was like, well, I'll be home after this next day. They're like, oh, come to Frisco and San Diego. So I sat in because they don't always have a percussionist. Los Lobos, they have a drummer, and then they'll
Yeah.
invite percussionists here and there that are available. So then I guess I was available at that time, and then pandemic happened. So then the year went by, and then that changed the whole situation for some of the members, and especially the drummer, where he had to make a decision. And so when 2021 came around, March came around, and then they were going to ask me to do something on percussion, and then that turned into, oh, the guy, we need you on drums, and then that was a whole other story. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta buckle down. I gotta listen to some music. I gotta start, working on the limbs, and yeah.
So how much of a workout was that?
Um, it was workout on the road because I did as much pre-planning as I could at home and trying to memorize, but for me, it's always been, I need to be in front of you. I need to jam with you. I need to feel you. I need to look at you. And
Sure.
there's going to be times where you're going to go like that. I know it's going to be that part, type of thing. But at the same time, I did my best to come prepared because I've had to do that for other bands too, and I don't come in cold. I can't do that, but I also don't notate. Even learning all music and writing and stuff early on, I never continued to use it. I totally left it alone, and I'm not well versed in it. It's like
You don't make notes.
I make my own notes when I need to, but it's pretty much just working it out and do it again, do it again, do it again, and do it again. And then once you do it so many
Wow.
times, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I got it now. I'm sure they'd like it to happen sooner than later. But and that was the thing. I was coming from a band, Gogol Bordello, which was I was with for the past 5 years. And that was a whole different style of playing and approach,
Right.
and and the physical approach of the physical demand, for that band, as a kind of a heavy set guy. It's like, oh, I kind of like need not to be liquored up. I need not to be eating cheeseburgers. I need to be like kind of on my toes and wake up and ready to go, and
Yeah,
and
there's a
do
lot of
90
energy in
90
that
minute
show.
workout on stage. you know
That's nuts. During the pandemic, did you keep yourself busy with? I mean, you were super kind, and you just were like, yes, right away when I invited you to play drums on a Couchers video. And thank you so much.
yeah.
You killed it. And you picked a killer song. I sent that list, and you were like, oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
Look at
was
that.
like, thanks for my care
Um,
package. I was like,
did you. Did you already have a setup to record at home before the pandemic came along? And were you able to keep yourself busy recording for other people's projects that way?
early on, yes and no. I've had Pro Tools since about like 2003, and been learning ever since. So I've always kind of had a setup, but not full on like I had it now, where it's just like pandemic was like, okay, I need a space in my house because eventually, I mean, I worked so much that it was always in somebody else's studio, so I never really had to do it. If I needed
Right.
to record stuff, I can go to a friend's studio and do it at their studio. But now it's like I'm home. I'm like, you know what? I have this equipment. I got together with Tascam, who sent me a couple of their interfaces, and so I was upgrading my stuff. And I'm like, okay, and let me have more than 12 channels. Let me see if this works. And I set it up in my living room, and I mic'd it all. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And I think I put out some videos, of me, because then even then it's like looking at our social media world. It's like content, 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 right? To actually be in people's eye, or their attention, whatever. Like, and I don't know, call me lazy. I'm just like, I'm not running to it as much as I should, but I'm trying to do a little here and there, which
It's
doing this with
hard
you.
it's hard to stay excited. I think if you're over 35 years old, it's hard to stay excited about being on top of social media, you
Right?
know?
That's true. That's true.
Shit.
I'm 46, and and I get it. I understand it, and I'm on it. It's like I feel like a kid and still like, oh, like, posting, but it's like, but yeah, I set it up and it sounded good, and I'm like, all right, cool. And then somebody was like, hey, I got this, track. Can you do some congas on it? So I'm like, sure. I have these old vintage gong bop congas. I put them out. And my house, this is my parents' house that I'm living at, but we have wooden floors and everything's like really nice sound. And I was like, oh, like, put a room mic and started experimenting again and started recording again to the point where, yeah, I probably did probably like, I don't know, 7 to 10 sessions during the pandemic for different
Oh,
friends and
great.
artists. And, and it worked out. So it really felt like nothing. I mean, obviously I felt the change, but I was still able to create and perform, even though if it wasn't in front of a crowd, I was still immersed in, having to create and be involved.
It's super important, especially if that's what your life has been focused on.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
having
it
that
got it got
outlet,
to
the
the point where
rug.
I'm like, oh, is this where I leave music alone and go find a job? It's like, and there's a lot of, there's many that have had to make that decision. It's like raise a family, or at least survive. It's like, geez, you
If you
know.
had to go get a straight job tomorrow, what kind of job would you seek?
Well, during the like early 2021, I was looking for jobs and I was trying to looking into the delivery thing, right? I'm like, okay, that seems,
Right.
I'm out, and eventually you're wasting your gas, wear and tear on your car. We're such a in LA, we're such a driving town that you need your car, It's like, can't, you can
Yeah,
take
man.
public transportation, but that's just going to take the day to complete whatever you got to do. But I ended up getting a job with Amazon. I applied and I got back, and it was as a driver. and and I had kind of been looking. I had gotten COVID. I had 3 weeks worth of the sickness, and I lost like 30 pounds. And like I tried to like take advantage of losing that weight and being active. And then now getting that job, I was like, oh, this is going to require me to be out in the field and deliver. And like I didn't know what to expect. It was so I hadn't. I only had like one or two jobs since doing music. I was a desk attendant at the
Right.
YMCA in like '92. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, I did, music kind of consumed my life. But I was like, all right, whatever, and I did the online training and I went through the whole process and I went to their plant and eventually got my Amazon, vest and hat and did driving training with a Sprinter van, and I can back it up, I can park it, I can parallel, and okay, you're good to go, and off you go. Here's the process. Here's 12 big bags that are the shapes of boxes, and there's probably like 20 to 30 packages in each one. And you got to go deliver them to all these addresses. And you have a little, like, a handheld, phone with a map and instruction, and it follows you and it goes, okay, you scan, you deliver it. But I was walking up and down stairs. I was all over the city of Long Beach. And I mean, a part of me was like, man, this is kind of like, it sucks because I don't get to have fun in this. But eventually it was a learning experience because I'm like, okay, well, this is what I had. If this is what I had to do, it wouldn't be my choice. But, I was looking at the positives, like, okay, I'm active, I'm walking, the food that I was taking, I was eating wasn't just fast food. I was like, okay, I got to keep my energy up. I can't, weigh myself down with a cheeseburger and just crap,
Sure.
felt healthy. So it was a different mindset, especially being, at the age that I am. I'm starting to feel the joints and here and there, and the doctor tells me I need this and knees and this and that, and I'm like, okay. And it was also kind of proving to myself, well, am I still capable, you know, of doing this? And the answer is yes, but on the verge of like, man, like it'd be nice to sit down, type of thing, and just relax and not do anything, But
Did you run into anyone that you knew? Like, you must know a shitload of people all around. Did you run into anyone you knew while you were out on the job?
no, No,
No.
because, and especially because I was just in certain neighborhoods. Uh, that only happens when I travel in music. I'll be
Right.
somewhere and, and be like, hey, Fredo, or, you played for so and so, or, I used to have an afro, about 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And that kind of became this thing where people recognized me, right? It's like, oh, you're the drummer for so and so. Like, okay, I'll keep the fro, since whatever. And eventually I was like, it's too much maintenance. I used to cut my hair short all the time. I'm like, you know what? I can do it myself. I don't have to pay for a haircut. And I don't have to maintain my fluffiness. But where's my wallet? I was going to show you my ID, but um, I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, it's like,
You're not still doing the Amazon gig?
no. Well, eventually I was like, I was going to do it as long, and it was only the weekends. I wasn't doing like a full on week, so it was kind of actually
Wow.
cool. It was like it would consume my weekend. It would be all day. I'd be out at
Right.
8 a.m. and back at 9 p.m. You know,
Wow.
so it was a whole day. It was long hours. But because there's a whole process of returning the van. But once Los Lobos started, having to do stuff, or like, it was time to come. I was time to come to tour, and I was deciding whether I was going to continue with them. I just said, and the it was like a third party company that I was working for. They're like, you don't really need to tell us that you're leaving, type of thing. And we can terminate you at any time, and you don't have to like give us notice. Just, I mean, yeah, give us a notice, but there's no process.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, cool. I was like, hey,
Wow.
I'm not coming back, and that was it. And just got my tax forms in the mail, and
Right.
and yeah, and and then started working with Lobos, which at end of July, August, we've been going strong ever since, and still going. I'm home, and I leave on Tuesday. Going to New
Oh, that's
Mexico.
great.
Oh no, no, we're not going to. We're going to Boston. We're back to the East Coast. Going to be
Oh,
near
is that
you,
right?
kind of. Yeah,
Uh, you guys hit Albany?
we already did. That was
You
last
did?
year. We did the egg. The egg.
Oh, what a weird place,
What's
huh?
that performing? Yeah, the
The
beautiful
Egg
theater though.
Performance Theater. It's so
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
inside, but what a strange looking building.
It's a
I've
weird.
seen a
That
couple of
whole
shows
area is
there.
just kind of.
Yeah, it's a weird. Capital cities are always weird, man.
That's true.
Austin is maybe the least, for all the keep Austin
Yeah,
weird shit, it's like the least weird capital city in the entire country,
yeah.
probably. Um, what, what a, what an experience to, I mean, at 40, you were 45, I guess, at the time when you did the gig. What a,
Oh yeah.
what an opportunity to sort of, examine and absorb humility. Not that you don't strike me as a kind of person who needs to learn any lessons in humility, but you also don't, it doesn't surprise me that you approach that with well, yeah, of course I'm going to do this.
Right. I mean, given the opportunity, I mean, I've had that confidence where it's just like, okay, see where this goes, type of thing. I mean, with Lobos, I've
Right.
kind of been, I've been around them since I was 14, 15 years old, because my best friend's dad was in the band. So I would go to their shows. So I would hear that music, even though, like, I would hear it at home, and then I'd get to hear it live and see it be performed. But I wasn't, it's like, I definitely sat down and, like, had to learn, some stuff, and then mess up, and have them go like, hey, so, we're going to get that ending or what? It's like, you've been here for, it's been more than a few months, and there's my
W-
humility. I'm just like, oh shit. All right.
were
But
there songs that were like that where you're like, I got to get this bit?
yeah, I mean, even still to this day, I mean, that I mean, it's the type of situation where like we don't rehearse as much as we need to, and we work it on the road. And I do as much preparation as I can, you know. And now it's like, hey, do you know so and so? And I'll be like, nope, let me check it out.
It's also a
Cool.
huge catalog.
It's a very huge catalog, and I'll be like, yep, let's try it out. You know, and we try it out, and then it either works or it doesn't. You know, and what's good is that sometimes they need to relearn it, but at the same time, they've been doing it for so many years that it'll come back like that, where I need to like really make sure it becomes a part of my DNA type of thing. But I think now that musically and on stage, we're at an understanding where I can follow their cues, they can follow mine, and my brain is now processing things differently. And as far as absorbing and having, going like, okay, let me listen to it, and then kind of internalize, okay, A, B, C section, whatever. But I don't get that detailed. I try to remember, okay, this is an important role right here, but it's and what I love is kind of reviewing. Just like any sports team, you tape your performance and you review it, and that's what, to me, social media is the best for. And what's funny is that Los Lobos generation, they don't nobody posts anything. You'll maybe see one or two posts, but you go to Gogol Bordello and there's like 30, 40 posts of the same night, and I'd be like, oh, that's what that sounds like. Oh, that's what that sounds. Oh, I should do this, you know.
Right.
But actually, no. What's even cooler is that Los Lobos have guys that archive the shows sometimes. So there's somebody back
Oh,
there
cool.
gets the whole show and be like, hey, everybody, here's January 3rd, 2022. It'd be like, oh shit. And sometimes I don't want to hear it, because I know something's
You're like,
wrong.
oh, that night?
Yeah, like that
Oh,
night.
that
Yeah,
night?
I'm
Uh,
good.
so will you be a part of the recording band moving forward?
If they ask me to, sure. And they just released an album, which is an album of covers. It's called Native Sons, and they did songs from artists that came out of Los Angeles: Beach Boys, The Midnighters, Jackson Brown. The list goes on. But and we're performing that now, and they've had their sons play on it. So a couple of the guys is kids. Dave Hidalgo's son, Dave Hidalgo Jr., who plays for Social Distortion, he played drums on some of the record, as well as Conrad Lozano's son, Jason Lozano. He played drums on some stuff, and there was some other guest musicians. I wasn't around for that, which is fine. If it comes around, I'm there, and they're going on 50 years as a band, I think, one more year. And
Is that right?
yeah,
Holy shit.
so I think comparing to see who's original right now, and it used to be the Stones, and sadly we lost our drummer, and it's like,
Right.
so the Lobos are still all original members and still pushing forward, man. And we're rocking out,
Wow.
man. I guess it's somebody the other night. He's like, "Hey, man, I just want to thank you." He's like, "You're a punk rock drummer, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah." I mean, I started playing that, and he's like, "No, no." He's like, "I hear your subtleties. It's cool, but," he's like, "your energy is just got a little punk rock vibe." I'm like, "Well, yeah, yeah, it should be. It should be that way, Because I mean, that's what I was used to. It's like my friend Louis gave me, a Black Flag tape and a Bad Religion tape and a No Effects tape, and Offspring and the whole, you know,
That's the Old
Epitaph
Testament right
catalog,
there.
and learning how to play
is
like
there
that.
a is there a band that you have fantasized about playing in? Can you give me a list of 5 bands that
Wow,
are like in fantasy land you would get the opportunity to tour with that you
man.
have not had the opportunity already?
The only way how I would relate it is to the albums that I would have played along to and would love to do it live would be like like Guns N' Roses. Um, the Who was one of them, and then it goes to um, like Santana, because those are like busy drummers, man. It's like, and then it kind of branches out to like Dave Matthews Band type of stuff, or like Smashing Pumpkins, or like because
Right.
the music is the music, and there's some favorites here and there, and but if you point at the drums, if you're looking at it drum wise, it's like some pretty like influential stuff, being done in those songs and albums, from all those artists. It's like so, but I don't know. I never have a thought out answer. I don't think I've ever had to think of it. I think my whole thought process in music has been so hands on and involved with whatever I've been doing, and the creativeness as it's come out of all that, and the musicians that I've gotten to meet. Like it's just like it's kind of fulfilled through that. Like I don't wish that I did that or did that, because I've been doing such crazy, amazing things. That's, I wish everybody can experience this, but this is my world. This is my life. It's like, oh, okay. Like, you know, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
You've had incredibly good fortune, but it's clear, not just because you're a killer player, but because you're an easy hang, which is also an important part of touring, right?
Yeah, definitely. Getting along with your bros, man. It's like if you can't laugh, have a good time, and you can be angry sometimes, and learning to hash it out, move on is the best thing, but it's hard, because tough relationships come and go, and when they're tough, and you got to like find your way out of it, or it eats you up inside, But for the most part, I've been lucky to have like a lot of good people and a lot of good friends that I'm still friends with, And hard to make enemies, That's of it, It's got to be a good reason for me to,
As
you
you
know.
get older, too, it's just like I don't know. I don't harbor enemies. It's like
Yeah, exactly.
what am I gonna do? Resent someone? That
Right.
doesn't harm them. That harms me. Um, Outside of the Los Lobos stuff. Oh, let's talk about bongoloids before we go.
Sure. That's Bongoloids
How,
is me. I'm a Bongoloid. Uh, the I guess the story is that I used to, people are like, oh, what'd you do today? And I was like, I was in the studio playing some Bongoloids, some Congoloids, just making up
yeah,
silly words in my mind. I mean, I love the song, Mongoloid by Devo.
yeah,
I like Devo, and I don't know. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of like a. It's like I need to find a project name, Like let me call it that, and it actually people were like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah, Bongos. And then I'm like, oh, okay. Now I need to back it up. Learning, Money Mark handed me a like an 8-track Tascam mini disc recorder. So I started learning how to play songs, and I had a guitar. So They did buy me an electric guitar early on, which was called Encore. And the action's like super high, and it's really hard to
yeah.
play, and and it has these little knobs and switches, and it makes noise, and like, but it was my first guitar. But I plugged it in and I tuned it up, and I started to write songs, and to the point where even my dad, here's where my dad comes in again, where it's like, he's like, people are making records out there. He's like, you need to make a record, and you need to have a focus, and what's it going to be about? And by that time, I think, I wasn't listening, I was just like, yeah, 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 all right, album. I'm not going to make an album. Just like I didn't need the kick drum mic, It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sure.
But he's like, you should put out an album by the time you're 30, and it took me 4 years after that to put it out at 34. And I put out a record, and I took the influence that I had from the Beasties and everybody I play with to Money Mark, who's done everything on his own, who plays drums and plays guitar, plays keyboards, and I ended up investing and having a lot of those instruments to where I have everything now to work with. I have a keyboard, I have drum, like, so I decided to write songs. I was renting a studio in Avenue 52 in LA, and I would go to the bar, have some drinks, and go back until like 3, 4 in the morning, and just like play. And I forgot. I just made the decision, and at the time, my ex wife, she was like, "Hey, let's," the Kickstarter thing was happening, and so I made it a thing. So I put all these songs together. With there was no theme, there was no idea behind it. Every song was individual. Somebody was like, "Oh, you made like a really cool song out of each genre, that I like, which was like
Right.
whatever, like Jawbreaker style punk to, to I don't know, to Alice in Chains type of like slower, grungy stuff to some electronic to some hip hop to, to a cumbia." But it was pretty much everything I was experiencing and playing. I was like, I'm gonna put it all in one record. And I put it out, and it was, people bought the record on off of the Kickstarter, and I was able to make T-shirts and stickers and hand it all out. And that was 2014, and I pretty much, it was at the same time where I was kind of going through losing my dad, losing MCA, kind of finding my way around, and I can see how many artists, it's hard to put importance on something, as much as you need to, and that's why with people that have the funding can have somebody else do it,
Right.
So I put as much effort as I could, and then my life kind of twisted, and the record was out there, and that was it. I was like, okay, that's it, and it still exists, and people are like, hey, when are you going to do something again? I'm like, I don't know. It's like I have all this recording gear, but I haven't sat down like I did then to like actually put something together. But something's a brewing. I do a lot of recordings on my iPhone, which I think that's going to be the next release. Will be like, hey, these are all songs that I created on my iPhone and didn't alter in any way, or I'd mix it, take it off, and like maybe put live instruments on it. But I still have the need the time to do that and put it out. And I don't know,
So you're what app are you using to create music on your phone?
just GarageBand.
So you use the keyboard and
That's my
program.
time on the airplane. I'm just like this. People are
Man, do
looking.
here's to bring it back around in like 2000, Timo turned me on to those all those guys had them, the Roland PMA.
Oh yeah, I have one because of them.
You did too?
I still have it. Yeah,
I do too.
a
I wrote
couple
that
of songs have.
song,
Yeah.
the theme song for the podcast. I wrote on the PMA back
No way.
then. It was my theme song, like because I was like, this is the theme to me. I was gonna make a theme song jacket that would play it, and I never did it. So
Yeah,
yeah, but so
I'm
touring,
familiar.
you've always occupied yourself with
But
messing
something.
around and
Yeah,
programming.
definitely.
Oh,
And
that's
that's
awesome.
even like watching the Beasties kind of be on the road and messing with stuff and having some kind of device, and to the point where mini discs came in, and then Mixmaster Mark's like, oh, you can put track marks and loop, that one track and make it a beat. And then we're like, oh, on a mini disc, it's like catch it on the one, catch it on the four, the and the four, and
Wow.
to that extent where I'm like, oh, I was learning all these different ways, and it's like, all right. So on my phone, it's like there's stuff that I don't know what kind of mindset I have to be in, but there's stuff that I'm like, wow, I created that, and it's like sometimes it'll be like droney stuff, but spacey, and like and others would be like some kind of like house song, but it's sounds like cool and complete, and I'll play it for people without telling them it's me. And they'll start like grooving out to it. I'm like, okay, I'm like kind of testing it out, and that's just like off of a phone, like and doing
Yeah,
a
man.
halfway decent mix of what I can. It's like with what you can do on phone, and
The
yeah,
amazing thing is you can release things digitally
yeah,
now more easily than ever. You
that's
should put
true.
that stuff out, man. You should.
I, I'm reaching that point where it's like I'm still like now that I'm on the road again, I'm just like I come home and I just want to sleep.
Right.
you know,
Um how much touring do you guys have on the books right now?
we're going all through summer. I think we'll kind of finish off a long tour during the summer with the Tedeschi trucks,
Oh,
and
rad.
yeah, I've heard so many great things about them, I'm not familiar. I've seen some stuff, but they've done this tour before, and they're like, "Oh, it's going to be fun." But we're still here and there, and then we got a couple of we got stuff in the fall that's booked. A couple of cruise ships. One of them, I forget what it's called, but has Social D on it and a bunch of like other band. X, I think, is on there. And
Have you done any of these performance cruises before?
I've done one with Gogol Bordello, and it was the salty dog cruise with Floggy Molly.
Are they fun? Is it
That one was
cool or is
definitely
it?
fun because it was just like a bunch of punk rock bands on one boat, and like you thought it was going to be even wilder, but it was kind of like awesome because everybody was just like having fun in their own way, and you either chose to
Yeah.
swim or you either chose to sit at the bar. But then you got punk rock karaoke playing at night, and everybody's just like, there's a punk rock show next to the pool. Like it's kind of it was
Oh,
a
that's
trip,
amazing.
man. And then you ended up in Jamaica at the end of the 3-day trip, and then everybody got off, and then got suntan, and then like it's gonna leave at this time, and you're back in the boat, and then the show's commenced. It's like it was pretty high, and you got
Three
it
days
was
there, 3 days back.
yeah, and we were and your friends, with everybody on the boat, so it's just like a big party, man. Like if you know
Wow.
most of the bands, I did,
Right. Of course. Oh, that's great. Um, well, that'll be fun, man.
yeah.
Is that also a Caribbean cruise?
That one, I don't know if that was a Caribbean cruise, and that was longer. That was like 4 days, I think, 4 or 5 days. But
You know what would be amazing? Is like a black metal cruise
oh
that
man,
goes through that navigates through the glaciers.
oh, I was gonna say go to the Bermuda Triangle, see what happens.
Right. Well, you might start off in the Bermuda Triangle and end up in the
and,
glaciers,
and then
like
up in
once
the
you hit the
glacier.
portal there.
That'd be good. Oh man.
Um, well, man, it it's amazing to get the chance to talk to you. You're so great,
Oh man, thank you,
and
man. I'm happy that we got connected, and I was stoked to do that performance with you and do that "Rocket from the Crypt" song. Like I don't know, when I saw that on the list, I'm like, oh yeah, because with the villains and all that, we were listening to a lot of those records, and that was on a regular
man, I didn't think
rotation,
anyone was ever gonna pick that song, and I was just like,
right?
this is just gonna it's gonna be one of those songs that sits there forever, and I'm just gonna stare at it. And then
That's cool.
along comes Fredo. It's great. So yeah, thank you for killing it, and
No,
thank you
thanks
for
for
just
having me, man,
being
and
a great hang. And best of luck on tour. Have a great tour. Um, I'm gonna kill the recording now,
okay.
and then well, here we'll just do this. Stop.